My name's Cassie and I live at the Lammas Eco Village in Wales. My place is called Plas. I grew up in rural Connecticut. I was probably like a lot of kids back in the 70s. I didn't have screens to look at, so I was outside in the woods, playing in the woods, making my dens, and that really gave me that connection to the earth, and I think I never lost it really. I met my husband when I was 17 and we lived in the States for a bit. I became pregnant with my eldest son, Ted. Now Ted has autism and a learning disability. That was a very, very large part of our reason for moving to a eco-village, a community, because we wanted him to be able to wander around and for him to feel safe and for us to feel that he was safe with other people. It took us 3 years collectively to get planning permission, and then we were able to land on this piece of earth in 2009. So we've been here for 10 years now. The Pembrokeshire County Council, they did a consultation with the community, and the community wanted to see much more sustainable ways of being able to build your houses. It was about being able to use natural materials, local materials, and kind of long-term sustainability and taking into account the life cycle of all of the materials in the building. This is a reciprocal roofed roundhouse. So you start with a wooden henge, like Stonehenge, and then you put up the main timbers in the middle in a spiral. You fix those in, then you put up the secondary timbers roof on, which is straw bale and butyl. And then it's got turf on top. It's got a nice little skylight in there. Then the walls are a stem wall of slate, and then there is straw bale infill. The Douglas fir frame was from about 30 miles away. The slate comes from, you can't see it, but there's a slate wall there. That comes from about 4 miles away. There's a quarry there. This is the roundhouse, which is technically our workshop, but we've been living in it for quite a long time. We've tried to adapt well to the challenges of living in a round structure because all furniture is square. What you do with a roundhouse is you try and cut it into segments like a pie. On the left here, there's a little pie slice, which is the office, and then there's a much bigger, actually almost a quarter of the building is a kitchen. Then we've got a small kind of back bit, which is our bedroom, and then another nearly a quarter, which is our living space. I also use it, because it will be my workshop one day, to house all of my baskets that are for sale. It's very common in the UK to have one of these, where you've just got a little pulley system. I guess it's to do with space, because in America you have so much space that this wouldn't be necessary, but in the UK there's so much less space that you have to devise cunning ways of drying your clothes. This is my second cob greenhouse. We started off building just in cobs. When we did any excavation, we'd take the topsoil off and put it in the garden. Then we'd use the next layer of subsoil as our main building ingredient. And we actually bought in clay. And then recently I had a nice volunteer who came and finished off this with some reclaimed doors and windows. This wall here actually backs onto my daughter's eco hut. So this is straw bale. And the idea with that is that you had a mutual heat exchange thing going on. So this protects her building as well as her building protecting this. This section is the only bit that's actually been properly finished. So this has had clay plaster put on top of the cob, and then on top of that it's been lime washed. The wood I use in this is just the spruce from the woodland. I'm not fussy, it's just a greenhouse. When I say just, I don't mean that in a bad way, but nobody's living in it. So this is the other end of the greenhouse. This is all our own local wood. The insulation on the roof I think is it's rolls of hemp. And this is a little tiny straw bale sleeping room. My daughter's in it now. It's a really, really cosy. It's actually got a cob floor in it. So I got DPM, which is damp-proof membrane, which is a thick plastic. And then I go skip diving for polystyrene. Dumpster diving, I think you call it. So waste polystyrene, collect loads and loads of it. And I made like a 15-inch polystyrene floor. And then we did 2 inches of cob. Then we've got underfloor heating in there. So I've got a 300-watt underfloor heating mat, and that's in clay and sand. The yurt is what we lived in. We had a yurt and a truck when we first moved here 10 years ago, and I'm just in the process of selling it. So I need money to pay for materials for the eco pod. This is another one of the reciprocal roofed roundhouses. This was built in 2 weeks. Its main purpose is storing all of my willow. So all of this willow I have cut by hand. I have 2,500 willow trees, and I coppice them every year, and I use them to make baskets and teach people. This was the first cob greenhouse. That cob greenhouse has got a wooden frame, and we put the roof on, and then we built the cob walls. This one was just a stem wall, and then we built cob before we put the roof on, okay? The reason I started doing it the other way around is because of the weather, really. It's much better to build the frame and put your roof up, and then you've got somewhere to work under. So a few things wrong with this. One is that it's very low. The second thing is that the windows at the front aren't big enough. I've improved all of this in the second greenhouse. And the third thing is the materials I used on the roof here are recycled polycarbonate. And the problem with it is that it's opaque. It's not clear. If I'd used non-recycled polycarbonate, it would have been lighter. However, having said all of those problems, I got 10 kilos of peaches, which in this climate is kind of unheard of. You don't get peaches unless you grow them inside, so that's done really well. And I haven't actually harvested the grapes yet, but we'll go and see them. We harvest a lot of rainwater. That's one of the things we have to do. So off the roof of this, for example, it goes into a wooden barrel there, and that overflows into a metal cattle trough. Here's the last few peaches on the peach tree, which has taken over the universe. And I don't know if you can follow me. But yeah, grapes. So this is the henges that I was talking about in the roundhouses. So he built one of those with people and did, really nice joined notches and things. And then we attached it to the side of the barn, and that's a mulberry tree and that's 2 kiwis. And so, yeah, we've got a little shady spot to sit in with lots of fruit growing next to it. And this is a cherry plum, so lots of fruit. That's what I like growing. This is what you'd call in America, I think, an A-frame. We call it a cruck frame. So you can see the A quite clearly of the frame. And so the other half of the building is the same frame, but we've just built around it. You can see my son's bed there and the 3 crucks. That's our hot water, solar thermal, which we had put in last year, which is wonderful, getting free energy from the sun. The cruck frame, this is the other half where you can't really see the frame so much. This is part of it here. My 2 sons are in this building. So my eldest is in this little cave. I was trying to think of a good word for it. Cave round there. And my son David is up there. And then I've got the shower room, which we haven't finished, around the corner. What we had to do with this, though, is retrospectively refit it to be suitable to live in. So the walls have got 2 lots of insulation, and then I've plaster and lathed them, so little tiny bits of wood, nail gunned on, and then plaster on top. And the insulation is sheep's wool, and then behind it is rolls of recycled plastic bottle insulation. The floor is same as my daughter's room, except we've used limecrete on top. This is what my daughter has appropriated. And this is the stable. I have sheep, but they're generally not allowed in here because my daughter uses it for her horses. Another reciprocal roof roundhouse, but this one is particularly lovely, I think, on the inside. And it's got lots of cordwood walls. And again, it's that just basic subsoil, bit of clay, spruce from the woodland. And all of the cordwood walls have either been built by people on courses, but I've also involved adults with learning disabilities and kids. One of the walls was built by 9-year-olds. So I love doing that. I love passing that on, and you can involve any age, any ability. If you come and look at that. So kids can mix mud up and they can slap mud on, and I don't really care what it looks like, to be honest. And then you've got this gap in the middle, apart from when some of them get a bit overexcited and they try and cob the whole thing. But it doesn't matter on a building like this. You don't need a stable that's really hot, you just need protection for the animals. This roof and the roof of the willow store down the bottom, basically we built the main frame of the roof, obviously with the purlins and everything, and then that's dust sheet on top, so just cotton fabric, just to stop you from seeing all of the recycled plastic that's on the roof. So every volunteer who's ever left a tent, every building bag that we've ever got, we chucked on the roof and did a big jigsaw of all the plastic, and then we got 1 piece of new plastic and put that on top as waterproofing. So for me, it's a fantastic way of getting rid of all that plastic, because you can't help it. You just get given it repeatedly, especially if you're building. This is my current project. One day this will hopefully be visitor accommodation, but at the moment it's just like extra living space because we've got so many people and not very much room to live in. I know people have bedrooms, so that's not the same thing as actual living space. My husband, basically, by the time it got to building this, had gone on strike, and he said, I'm not doing any more building. So I had to crowdfund. I did a crowdfunder 2 years ago, and I got £5,000 together to start this off. And so we had a local carpenter come in and build the frame, which is a spruce frame. And then my husband had made the trusses for the roof previously. So then we, as part of a course, again through teaching, I got a local guy in to teach how to make the cedar shingle roof, which is really unique around here. Not so much in America. Here, this is really, really unusual. So it's very, very beautiful as well, I think. Well, I think what you have to start with is a feeling inside that you need to change something. And everybody's path is so different. So you follow that feeling When I look on the internet, I see all of this constant criticizing of other people. You have to be vegan. You have to not travel. You have to do this and you have to do that. And I think I return to that feeling inside. If people are able to come back to themselves and return to that feeling inside, they will know what's right and what's wrong. I'm not evangelistic about this. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm saying this is one option for anybody who really feels called to build their own resilience and integrate into the mainstream economy in a different sort of way. Then I would say this is the right way of doing it. So, for example, my willow, I grow my willow and then I go out into the community and I teach people how to weave baskets and sculptures. So I'm integrated in that way, but all the willow I grow and the income from my courses counts towards my livelihood.